The topic is the implication of President Obama's election on the continent of Africa, and of course Dr. LMadu2 has given a very, very interesting overview of some of the issues that the President of the United States of America, as well as other Western European countries, will have to face dealing with this continent. Let's continue our discussion here, Dr. LMadu2.
Yeah, having laid down a background of what's happening now, what are the policies of the Obama government as far as Africa is concerned? That's what somebody will ask, and which is a very relevant question. Quite frankly, since the independence era, starting with the Belgian Congo, when Patrice Lumumba was overthrown, in a CIA-sponsored coup, the U.S. has never had what you call a coherent Africa policy.
There is no African policy.
It's never been any coherent, concrete Africa policy.
Dealing with the continent of Africa.
Exactly. This happens, that's what we do. None. It's been, patchwork, hodgepodge, Clinton tried, when he was in government, and when Bush was in power, he appropriated some money for AIDS in Africa, which of course was money that was cut from development aid to the poor countries anyway. Okay, so now that Obama is in power, there's high expectations amongst the ordinary people and the political class about what he's going to do for Africa. It's funny, there's a story in Uganda now that President Museveni of Uganda is afraid because of Obama coming to power. Obama's father comes from the Luo ethnic group in Kenya. And in Uganda, a sub-ethnic group called the Langi and the Acholi are linguistically related to the Luo in Kenya. And because Museveni has been perceived by these two ethnic groups in Uganda as against them, so they feel that since Obama
is not president, that
he will bring his bear to be on these people. But it's a false assumption. However, that's kind of the expectation. Now, Obama and his spokespeople during the campaign articulated 3 cardinal principles on which they will deal with Africa. Okay? One is, security for African nations. 2 is coordination of actions concerning Africa with African leaders. In the past, we just did what we wanted and then informed the leaders, without really getting their input. Exactly. And 3 is integrating Africa into the international economic system. Right now, it's like Africa is not part of that system.
Not part of the world, as a matter of fact.
Exactly. You have the G8 and all these. African leaders are invited as observers, not as part of the game. And what Obama wants to do, if he keeps to some of those, principles, is to integrate the continent into the overall Africa, the same. When you look at on TV, you never hear of the African Stock Exchange or the Stock Exchange in Abidjan. So you hear about the one in Tokyo and London, all this.
But Africa is an almost forgotten continent.
Exactly. It's not part of the economic system. It's marginalized in that case.
In spite of all of the wealth that Africa has, Africa is not part of it.
Exactly. It's just a place to get raw materials, and dump unwanted goods. So how is he going to operate insofar as Africa is concerned? Politically, he has to push the issue of democratization. Make sure that leaders don't cling to power forever. For example, Mugabe has been there for almost 30 years, since 1980. Compaoré in Burkina Faso has been there since 1987. Bongo has been in Gabon since 1967. So that's part of what he should do, is to pressure leaders to step down, when their terms are due. And this ties into what? Human rights. Okay? A whole lot of African leaders are still violating rights of their people. And you cannot have stability when the rights of the ordinary people have been trampled. Sometimes they will revolt, and they have the problem. For example, the government in Equatorial Guinea, with all the money it has, it continues to repress its people. They feed prisoners sand and water in jail, in the famous Babi jail in Equatorial Guinea. So that's very important, that leaders should stop,
all the human rights
violations, so that there can be peace and stability. Because when you don't have peace and stability, nobody wants to invest.
Okay.
You know, and that's very important for African countries to be stable. And it cannot be stable when people are always revolting against their leaders because of perceived or real oppression. That's very important. What has it got to do with the economy? Okay, now we talk of the Middle East all the time.
All right.
I don't think if we have a coherent Africa policy based on sound economic judgment, the U.S. should worry about Middle East oil. Currently, the African nations supply more oil to the U.S. than Saudi Arabia. Most people don't know that. Okay? You have huge reserves of oil in Nigeria, in Equatorial Guinea, in Gabon, Congo Brazzaville, Sao Tome, Principe. You have oil there. Oil has just been discovered in Ghana. You have oil in Chad. Okay. So a coherent Africa policy, you know, based on economic, justice and fair play, the U.S. can get all the oil it needs from Africa without worrying about the Middle East. That's very important. Obama is talking about economic, energy independence. That's one way of having secure, this in oil to the U.S. That's very important, you see. So that's some of what I think he should be looking at, formulating an integrated, Africa policy. And because of his background and the tremendous goodwill he has on that continent, he's in a position for a major transformation of policy in Africa without the constraints
that
imposed on exactly that other president might have had. So it's very important. You see?
So politically, he has an inroad there that no other president of or no other world leader has ever had in terms of dealing with the whole continent. The French could probably deal with West Africa, English with West, etc., and you could divide Africa up. But in terms of having one leader that can deal with the entire continent, have the support and the confidence, I believe, of the entire, he is the individual.
Exactly.
Would you say that he represents that?
He is well positioned more than any other leader.
Dr. LMadu2, let us make preparations for the second commercial break. Then we'll come back and we'll have about 10 minutes to allow you to get into a greater discussion in reference to this. But I think that that's essentially what we're concerned about, and I think that this is something that has to be articulated because I don't think that you hear it on the radio, you don't hear it in the news or whatever. And as we both said, that Africa, it appears as if Africa is still what? The lost continent.
That's
and of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Dr. LMadu is talking about